everybody. So we're so excited. We are here to talk about one of our favorite animation studios, Aardman Animation, and their stop motion animation. And Mike is here with me to talk about it.
Hello, everyone.
And you want to introduce yourself for people that may have not seen you before?
So my name's Mike Culligan. I live in Ireland, which, as some of you Americans may know, some of you may not, is right next to the UK. So Aardman Animation stuff is reasonably treasured here as well, you know. So it's quite important to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird to me because I just feel like Aardman puts out such quality films. For the most part, I have a couple that I don't like, but they put out such quality films, and they just can't seem to catch a break here in the United States. At least since Chicken Run, they haven't been able to. And I think it's a combination of distributors and just them not being CGI, which is the trend now in children's animation. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why. Because Shaun the Sheep, I felt like that should have been a big hit, but it wasn't.
No. Well, I mean, those reasons are obviously good ones, but I won't deny that a lot of its stuff is very, very culturally and quirkily British in a way that maybe doesn't necessarily translate. I recall Nick Park saying he was frustrated with DreamWorks executive notes on Curse the Were-Rabbit to make it more accessible to British audiences, taking out some very British jokes, toning down the British accents, that sort of thing. And he was quite relieved when he did the fourth Wallace and Gromit short that the BBC gave him like one note during the whole production.
Huh. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I guess it really is true because you look at Paddington 2 didn't even do very well over here, so I don't know. It's tough, and I felt like that was pretty well marketed. Whereas like some of the marketing has been kind of sketchy, and it still didn't do that well. So I don't know what it is, but I love the studio. So most of their films have been stop motion. They've done a couple, and I do think we're not going to talk about the shorts, but I still do think that the Wallace and Gromit shorts are the best thing that Aardman has ever made. It's still my favorite. I don't know. What about you?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, they're obviously pretty darn great and fantastic. Like the three classics are like masterpieces or near masterpieces. The fourth is a bit of a step down, but still real quality stuff. Yeah. And I'll mention it more when we get to Were-Rabbit. But a lot of Aardman's strengths shine in the kind of half-hour format as opposed to a feature film. But I'll get to that later.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. Well, we're going to have fun. We're going to start with the most recent release that they just had. It's called Early Man. And it's kind of a weird place for me to start because I love Aardman. But I was pretty disappointed, actually, with this. And I found myself, like, when I first came out, I was like, oh, it was okay. It had some cute moments. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I feel like I'm not being 100% honest. I'm not with how I really felt about the movie because I love Aardman so much and I know how much work it is, stop motion.
Kind of a situation where you love the studio so much so you were being subconsciously easy on the film?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I really was. And the things I liked about the movie is obviously the animation is always a lot of fun from Aardman. Yeah. Really fun. Although some of the character designs were a little weird. I don't know why they made them so pig-nosed.
Pig-nosed? Yeah. Well, Aardman always have the thing where their characters have the buck teeth. That's kind of their signature thing. Apart from the fact that they're, claymation and the fingerprints, if you see that kind of teeth, it's an Aardman film.
Yeah.
So
but they've always had the noses though were kind of weird in Early Man, I thought.
Maybe they were. It's not leaping to mind right now, but I'll concede you on that point.
Okay, fair enough. Well, and there were some cute moments, particularly I thought in the setup of these sort of prehistoric people, and there were some amusing jokes. But for me, like it becoming a soccer movie, I don't know. I just didn't think it was funny, and I didn't think that it was engaging as a sports movie, and I don't know.
Mhm.
It just was kind of boring for me, if I'm honest, and it was not funny enough
Mhm.
for me.
Yep.
But I don't know. What are your sort of takeaways now you had some time to sort of sit on it, an
Uh,
early man?
well, the funny thing is, I can probably see that the next time I watch the film, I probably expect that my opinion of it will go down. It's not unsimilar to you in that now that I've lived with it for a bit, I'm wondering, was I being slightly too generous? I doubt to nearly the same extent. I'm talking like only dropping like half a point,
Okay.
but even so, I'm in the weird position where I most of what you're saying I do agree with. Like something I said in my review was that there was an unusual dilution of wit in terms of what's going on. Like a lot of the elements that would sort of have humor to the side, the way other Aardman films do, were kind of played straight, and as a result, they weren't as chuckle-inducing. That certainly applies to most of the sports movie elements, certainly. So that and maybe because it wasn't as witty, I certainly noticed structural flaws more than I might otherwise, because comedy can help cover up those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was a bit slight. Now, I do think for me, there was still enough comedy to work. In particular, I thought the message bird was a very, very funny gag. But
Yeah, that was
yeah,
funny. And but I wonder, do you think that you got some of the jokes as a UKer? Um,
UK
like
and Ireland, yeah.
that
But well,
knows about
here's the thing.
soccer?
Well, like personally, I have basically no interest in soccer. I kind of like respect the place the game has in society, where it's just so culturally prevalent in Europe that you can't help but know how it works. So even though I basically don't follow the game, I like know the rules and can get much of the cultural jokes. And even though it's about a sport I don't follow, because it's so
Okay.
culturally prevalent, I can get behind it in the film. It's not unsimilar to how I'd feel, say, watching one of the Cars films, where I wouldn't watch NASCAR racing or Formula One or anything like
Okay.
that, but I
Yeah.
can kind of get behind it. So when it comes to the film's middling reception in the US, I don't doubt that at least a small part of that is due to people basically being tricked into watching a soccer film. And I'm honestly not trying to say Americans aren't willing to look into stuff outside of their own country, but I kind of get the impression that because it's a sport they don't really like, it kind of turns them off more than it would here with me, simply not liking it but knowing how it works. I'm
Yeah.
getting a little I'm getting a little too in depth here, but I
No,
do
I
want to
agree
say
with you.
I do want to say one thing. I don't think the fact that specifically it's about soccer is like a reason to uh, turn off the film, because I mean it's about soccer, but it's not like it's thematically about soccer. Uh, that's like saying is Cars about racing? Yes, but what is it really about? Someone learning to
Right.
appreciate the small town life and all that. I mean, obviously, Aardman don't go for the thematic depth that Pixar do. They do a more sort of quirky comedy based style that has a lot of heart, of course. Really,
But
yeah,
I felt like there were some jokes that were unique to UK football fans, like soccer
yeah.
fans, like jokes about different teams and stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I could tell that were funny to
Mm-hmm.
people there, but that since I don't know anything
Yeah.
about that
Well,
so
I certainly miss some of those, I will say. I mean, I'd get very obvious ones like early Man United. Uh,
yeah.
Man United being Manchester United, which is like one of the biggest teams in the UK. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. And so that's more what I'm talking about, more than just like the actual sport, is I felt
yeah,
like a number of the jokes were like, I don't understand
yeah.
what that's, but
And it was kind of obvious that there was a joke that you weren't getting, and it would
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
take you out of the moment a bit.
But I do agree with you that I think if it had been about like our football
Yeah.
or baseball, I think we probably would have liked it better over here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's a fair, and I wouldn't say somebody not see it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not awful. It's not like I was like, it's not an emoji movie or something. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just was disappointing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's easy to feel that way when it doesn't live up to the lofty status of Chicken
Yeah.
Run or Were Rabbit.
Yeah, so that's
Especially
fair.
seeing as this is Nick Park's first film since Were Rabbit, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's as good as we'll just talk about the next one.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's in the same ballpark as Shaun the Sheep movie. So,
Well, no.
so where do you
No.
have Early Man in your ranking of Aardman films?
Um. Give me. I initially said I thought it was better than Pirates. Now I'm kind of 50-50 on them.
Yeah.
I'm going to side with you and put it just below Pirates. So I'm going to put it sixth, still ahead of Flushed Away.
Oh my gosh. I wonder if we're gonna have very similar rankings, I think, because that's exactly my ranking.
Well, it's not like Pixar ranking the Aardman films can get kind of boring. Not just because there's only seven of them, but which ones are better than others is just kind of agreed upon. I
Yeah.
mean, every Pixar film from Toy Story up to Toy Story 3, all 11 of them, excepting the first Cars, you could ask 11 people and they
Yeah.
probably rank them 11 different ways.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point for sure. Same thing with like Disney. My
Well,
Disney
yes.
canon ranking, I have like literally my top 35 are all A grades.
Hmm. Well, when
So
you
it's
have about 56 films, that's too big a list to compare to other people and get any proper
yeah.
results. Come on.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Shaun the Sheep movie. This was
Yes.
based on the show that they do, Shaun the Sheep
Hmm.
Show. I actually
Yeah.
had the first season on
Huh.
DVD. And I thought this movie was completely delightful. And it was
Oh no,
interesting.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was interesting to me because it came out the same summer as Minions, and really, like the films have like some similar elements, with these
Hmm.
cute little kind of creatures, like going into the big, sort of the city and whatever, and like, but this is just so much like it's less tawdry, first of all, but it's so much funnier. It's so
Oh.
much cuter. The animation's so much better, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
I wanted to be like a pick this instead of that, everything. But
Oh.
but yeah, Sean, he just wants a day off. I mean, the poor little sheep. He just wants a day
Yeah.
off, and he ends up getting into all kinds of trouble.
Mm.
And it's just really, really sweet and adorable. What did you think about Shaun the Sheep movie?
Oh, yeah. It's so great. I mean, for a lot of people that don't know, Shaun the Sheep, it's a TV series. It's obviously made and released in Britain, but it's because it's completely dialogueless. It travels across the world very well, though not to the US that much. I mean, enough for you to own the DVDs, but I don't know if it airs on television
Yeah,
much.
I don't know. I
But
don't know.
so so the series is just typically a high antic stuff where the sheep are trying to get away from doing farm stuff, get around their farmers. So it's just wacky comedy. But then the feature film, it does a very unique thing where it honest to God feels like it's in a different universe or continuity than the main show, because obviously there really is a lot of heart and warmth there. And uh, color me impressed, it all really works. Like when you
Yeah,
have all those moments towards the end where the sheep are feeling legitimately sad and the farmer makes up with them, it's very poignant. It's also like really funny. I mean, it's one of those things where even though it's very very sanitized in terms of being made for little children, the timing of the jokes and the placement of them works so well that you can't help but be chuckle inducing. It's like Winnie the Pooh. It's for little kids, but it's made so well that anyone can and will be captivated.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, really, even just that the joke about the what happens to the farmer becoming the hairstylist, that
Yeah.
was so funny. Every time they would
Yeah.
kind of go back to that, it totally killed,
Hmm.
and it was just so sweet and
Hmm.
so. I mean, who can't relate to wanting a day off, and relate to Shaun the Sheep?
Yeah.
It didn't patronize or to kids at all. It just was just a sweet, lovely little story, and
Yeah.
yeah,
It's the kind of film that makes me feel better about humanity having watched it.
yeah, me
Sort of.
too. Agreed. It's just timeless. This is a
Yeah.
movie as opposed to again something like Minions.
Hmm.
You can't show that in 20 years. Why would you want to? And but Shaun the Sheep movie, you could totally show it in 20 years, and it would still
Yeah.
be funny. It would still ring true. It would still be sweet. And so, yeah, I agree. And it's basically a silent movie, which is really
Yeah.
fun to introduce your kids to
Oh yeah.
that type of humor and that type of comedy. And so, where do you have Shaun the Sheep movie ranked in your ranking?
Uh, just before I mentioned that, I heard that when Early Man was shown in the US, there was a Shaun the Sheep 2 trailer in front of it. D- did you see
Um,
it? No, no. Well, it
I'm
it
not
wasn't.
sure.
It might have only been done when it got like on its first day release. Because didn't you see an advanced screening or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Okay. Well, it weird thing is it hasn't been released online yet for whatever somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I thought I'd bring it up because in the past, Aardman have often had lengthy gaps between their feature films in terms of uh, like when you have to wait for the next one. But I heard that pretty much as soon as they finished production on uh, Early Man, they had the models and script and stuff ready to go for Shaun the Sheep 2, so they've started production of it already. So is it supposed to be next year or 2020? Point is, it's not that far away. Shaun the Sheep
Yeah,
2.
I think it's next year.
Yeah.
Let me see. What have they? Yeah, 2019 is what's currently listed
Oh, there you go.
for Farmageddon, a Shaun the Sheep movie.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that sounds like it's
Yeah.
gonna be good. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Mhm.
Um,
But, but
so
but as for placement,
okay.
third, and it's kind of in the pretty fantastic for me. There are a couple of niggling issues. I'm not so sure about the song usage. There's one song that I think really works, which is the original "Feel Like Summer" that they kind of use as a thematic motif. But all the other songs speak to one of the things I don't like about kind of British films spun off from TV shows, which is that even sometimes even more so than their American counterparts, they have a let's plug songs in thing. It's not
Mhm.
film damaging, but it is a little distracting. So there's a bit of that, and sometimes the structure can be a tad wobbly, and obviously there will be jokes that don't work. So it's not at the near masterpiece status of the two above it, but it's still flipping fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
went back and forth, and part of this might be somewhat nostalgia
Mm-hmm.
coming factoring in a little bit, but I ended up at fourth.
Oh,
But I love it. I think
okay.
it's really hard. They're
Mm-hmm.
very close. These top four for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, the next one up in their canon
Yeah.
is the Pirates, and it was called the Band of Misfits here. And
Yeah.
I guess it was in an adventure with the scientists or something like that. There.
Yeah, so over here it's based on a children's book, not one that I've read, not the one that I've read, but the title was adapted literally, and I haven't seen the American version, but I've heard that a couple of jokes were changed and two actors were recast in the American version.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. There was also a thing where there was an offensive leprosy joke in the trailer, but that was changed before it was released for like all versions.
Oh,
Yeah. So.
interesting. Yeah, I guess I feel like I like this more than most.
Hmm.
I thought it was really funny. I especially like any of the Darwin jokes I thought were
Hmm.
really funny, and I've always sort of liked comedies with like characters that think they're really great, but they're
Hmm.
actually really not great, and that's like a funny dynamic to me.
Oh,
And
you get that kind of thing all the time in British comedy, especially on television.
yeah,
Like you might have two characters, one that's kind of in charge, but is kind of dumb, and then you have the sidekick who thinks he's really smart, but is also kind of really dumb, but in a more kind of offbeat kilter way. You get that all the
yeah,
time,
that's
and
true. Or like a
and I get
Jeeves and Wooster kind of thing,
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of.
yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
I think when it comes, Pirates is a film that is really dumb and knows it's really dumb and embraces being really dumb, and it's that dumbness that kind of makes it a laugh riot. I'll be honest, and really
Yeah.
funny. But it also kind of makes it a bit slight and the kind of film where it's funny, it's enjoyable, but I don't know that there's that much to it. Which I
Yeah.
know it's a minor sin as things go, though.
Yeah, I mean, and just the whole concept of Queen Victoria, like
Yeah,
hating the pirates and some of the things, and like
yeah,
was funny. And every time that monkey has the cards, that made me
yeah.
laugh. Um,
Oh,
that was funny gags, and I also think that this may be my favorite as far as production design from all
mhm.
of Aardman. The amount of detail into the ships
Oh,
and to the other things is really, really great here, I think.
well, yeah, well, definitely in terms of their uh five stop motion films, most of them, uh, even though they're brilliantly well made in terms of how they're animated. They keep to a kind of domestic scale. Like Chickarum all takes place on one farm, where
Yeah,
Rabbit is mostly in a few households and one small town. Shaun the Sheep movie, even though it takes them to the city, it has a very dollhouse quality to its sets. Only really this and Early Man kind of use large landscape shots and vistas and what have you, and this being on the high seas, it's certainly the most visually ambitious of their stop motion films.
yeah,
Yeah, it's the only one that uses extensive CGI. Like most of the oceans and law background sips are CG'd in, and to their credit, they're CG'd in very well.
yeah. Well, and there's a funny gag too about the monster in the map. That was a
Yeah,
funny gag.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you about it probably feeling a little disposable,
Hmm.
but I really do enjoy it. I think
Yeah,
it's a really fun movie,
yeah.
and
And
so
like you said, there's a lot to be said about the way it kind of brings out that whole concept of the queen hating pirates, and it doesn't like devote a great deal of energy to it being shocking or whatever. It just kind of brings it up, and once it's brought
yeah,
up, it treats it as a normal part of the plot and it moves on. Like
yeah,
other films would devote a lot of time and energy to a whoa crazy plot point. This one, it brings it up and moves on to the next, so
yeah,
it packs itself full with stuff. So
yeah,
it's the kind of film where I doubt I could see anyone leaving dissatisfied, unless, of course, the humor is just too much, or the whole dumbness of it does get to be a bit overbearing.
yeah. Because it's not, at least in my opinion, it's not boring,
Oh,
and that's just so. I mean, even if you don't love it, I can't imagine hating it.
oh no, of course not.
But and I think that Hugh Grant is like the perfect voice for this pirate, you know. And
Yeah.
I really do like a lot of the Will Ferrell movies. I think are funny because it's like this guy who thinks he's like really great at these things, but it turns out he's really terrible, and that just makes me laugh for some reason. The dynamic
Yeah.
of comedy. So
Yeah.
anyway, I have it at number 5 in my ranking. So it's
Um,
about the same, I think.
I'm going, yeah, probably number five for me. I'm erring on back and forth between it and my number four spot, but
Okay.
I'll mention that later.
Cool. Yeah, and I do have to say also with Early Man, when I did see it, I was very tired.
Uh,
So I do need to see it again, kind of
mhm. Yeah,
more rested. It was early in the morning, and I was
yeah.
pretty tired. But anyway, so let's talk about Arthur Christmas. This was their
Hmm.
foray into, or one of the forays into CG animation, not
Hmm.
stop motion animation. And I mean, I'm a huge Christmas movie person. I love Christmas movies. And I love Arthur Christmas. I think it is so great. I think it has such heart. I just love Arthur as a character and just how pure he is. And I love the fact that, like, the brother character isn't really a villain. Like,
Hmm.
he's doing what he thinks is right, you know, like he's trying to be organized and trying to make sure everybody gets, and like,
Hmm.
and he probably deserves to be made Santa with how good a job he's doing, you
Hmm.
know, and yet the dad just keeps,
Yeah.
plugging away, and he doesn't get that
You
big
feel
account.
you can't help but feel a little sorry for the poor guy.
Yeah, yeah, and he just doesn't have that like heart that Arthur has.
Yeah.
But he's not a bad guy, and I like that a lot. I think it's really
Yeah.
good, and I love everything about it. I think it's just a lovely movie.
Yeah. Well, mm, well, I can't really disagree with you. It's one of those cases where I admit the movie is very impressive. It just hasn't stuck with me a huge bit, and I'm kind of hard pressed to say why, because it is quite funny. It is very heartwarming and touching, and I think the most interesting thing is that it's probably of all their films the one that deviates most from their house style because, well, firstly, they only have two CG films, and unlike Flushed Away, this one isn't trying to do Aardman claymation in CG. It's
Right.
making up its own CG style. To its credit, it's still visually quirky enough that you wouldn't mistake it from coming from one of the big American studios. It's kind of the way they shape the characters' chins and heads, you know.
Yeah.
So it's definitely still visually quirky enough, and to my money, I think it works better than when they tried to copy the claymation and flushed away, which I'll get to in a sec. So I kind of say that I probably do need to rewatch it again. For the moment, I'm just kind of going to put it in there at number 4,
Okay.
above Pirates.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yes.
actually have it at
So
number
it's
two.
like, yeah,
Oh,
so it's,
sorry.
sorry. So just to clarify, if Shaun the Sheep was fantastic, this is like really good for me.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's
That's
fair.
where yeah.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
I actually have it at number 2. I love it. And but again, I am like huge on Christmas movies, so that's definitely part of the reason why I respond so much to it. So I
Yeah.
have it at number
Fair enough.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like Christmas movies okay, but I wouldn't say there's a particularly large number of them that have endeared me. I mean,
mhm,
obviously I'll watch movies at Christmas, but I mean movies that are specifically about Christmas.
mhm. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I can understand that. So let's talk about Flushed Away,
Mhm.
and that's the next one up. And I feel like this movie has so many ingredients that I should love.
Yeah.
And I just re-watched it last fall for reviewing my
DreamWorks.
DreamWorks. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it has a bunch of voice actors that I like. It has Aardman that I like. It has, uh, I mean, the story seems like something that I should like, but I don't like it. I don't. I find the characters all to be unlikable and kind of, I don't know. I just don't warm up to any of them, and I don't think I find it more sort of off-putting in the humor
Yeah.
than actual funny.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. And it's just
Yeah.
kind of, there's points where it's a little bit gross, like they don't manage to make the whole rap thing as appealing as say Ratatouille does,
Mhm.
where they're able to kind of, Ratatouille is somehow able to make it still sort of beautiful, and it makes, the sewers in Paris still look kind of pretty.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they're not able to really do that here. It's still kind of gross, and
Yeah.
I don't know, but the biggest problem is just the characters. I just didn't like the characters. But anyway, what about you and Flushed Away?
Well, I think I can kind of sum up what you're trying to say with one thing. It's the kind of film where the sum of it is it's less than the sum of its parts. Like all
Yeah.
the individual elements should build to something pretty good, but it ends up being less than that, and you're kind of hard pressed to explain why, because it's like it should be like all the ingredients are there, they're just not clicking. But I would agree kind of with most of the points. Like the characters don't resonate as much as some of the other Aardman ones, and the comedy and stuff can be a bit hit and miss. And you'll indulge me if I say about the animation for a moment. So
Yeah.
for those of you who haven't seen the film, it's interesting because it's trying to take the Aardman claymation style, basically look like Wallace and Gromit, but done in computers. To their
Mm-hmm.
credit, they really did try. Like they used computer programs to to basically crapify the frame rate so it has a jittery feel to the character movement, and they also use a computer program to simulate fingerprints on the characters so they look like they're done in clay. So that's all well and good, but it doesn't really work. It still feels a bit too sort of slick, and because it's trying to look coarse and hand done, but it also looks slick on the side, and visually that leads to it being kind of off-putting in a much more subtle way than a normally poorly animated film. It's like the
Yeah.
film as a whole, it feels like the visuals should work, but there's just kind of an itch about them that's consistently but notably distracting.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
know a lot of people who think this is stop motion. They definitely
Yeah.
did a good job in that regard, but yeah, I don't know, just something about they just weren't able to either with like the sewer stuff, like you either have to make it kind of cute or pretty in some weird way. But they weren't
Yeah.
able to do it. It just was all kind of like, ew.
Yeah,
It's
I
gross.
think it's the fact that there's a bit of ugness about trying
Yeah.
to do those two visuals that make the sewers a bit kind of because since there's a bit of inconsistent itch about the visuals, it makes things that you might not notice that much more prevalent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, very, very true. So we
mhm.
both have this at 7. Let's move on and talk about Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were Rabbit. This is their
Yes.
Oscar winner,
Yeah.
and I do feel this is not as good as the shorts, and I think that that is just saying how great the shorts are, because this is
Yeah.
pretty great.
It's like talking the difference between top tier Pixar and just a tier below it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're exactly right. And but this is just such a delight. It's so funny.
Hmm.
It's so sweet. Those rabbits are the cutest thing I've ever seen in
Hmm.
my life. Adorable. And I don't know, it's just really funny and pleasant and enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. In fact, Were Rabbit kind of does something that I felt was missing from early Man. What Nick Park does in a lot of his films is he'll kind of spoof a film genre on the side, but the film will also be a very good example of said film. Chicken
Yeah,
Run obviously is a fantastic prison escape film, both in,
right.
parodying stuff like Great Escape, but also being a very, very good version of it. And obviously, this is kind of they called it a vegetarian horror film. So yeah. I,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't mean it's for vegetarians. I mean, instead of killing people, he's
right.
eating
No,
vegetables.
right.
So there's all that. There are only really two problems I could say I have with it. One, well, actually, they're kind of the same. It doesn't completely survive being 85 minutes as opposed to a half hour. It's this. It's something. Some of the same problem you get when you take any TV show. I know they're shorts, but it's the same thing. And balloon it up to feature length. It's not that they don't have enough content for being a film. It's that you have to wonder how much is necessary. And to a small degree, this has subplots here and there that just kind of hang
Yeah,
there and aren't especially impactful. It could be a lot worse if the film wasn't so consistently funny and delightful. But put it this way, when you're watching it, you're aware of the fact that it, you're aware of its length a bit more than you are with, say, Chicken Run. Yeah,
yeah. I think that's totally fair. I do
yeah.
agree with you on that. And I went back and forth on my ranking with these top four really.
Hmm.
But I do agree that there are maybe some spots where it's lags a little bit. But I don't know. I love the voice cast so much. I think they're
Yeah.
so funny. I like the villain. He's hilarious. I just it's just really great. And so
Yeah.
I actually have this at number 1 in my ranking.
Oh,
My
well, really? Huh.
Yeah, it's
Very.
my favorite. I just love Wallace and Gromit so much. And like
Yeah.
I said, my number 1 would be the shorts. That's my number
Yeah. So
1. So yeah, I love Gromit especially. Oh,
yeah.
so great.
And I think one thing this film does really well, that one advantage it gets from being longer, is that it's able to open up the relationship between Wallace and Gromit a lot more, and there's so much more warmth to it, and so much of it is unsaid, not just because Gromit can't speak, but Wallace is always doing things like "at a boy, Chuck," and
Yeah,
there's a good lad, and Gromit is just going along with it. But whenever Wallace is in danger, you can always sense that Gromit will just do anything for him. That scene where Gromit's locked in the cage and he just shakes it, and then he breaks down crying. I mean, there are scenes where he breaks down
yeah,
crying in the previous two shorts, but that one is just so much more impactful because his master, his best friend's going to die, and he thinks there's nothing he can
it's
do about
true.
it.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
point. Yeah, that's true. There is some tense moments, some scary moments.
yeah.
Not
And
as
again,
much as the Chicken Run, but
yeah.
as far as scares,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean the rabbit and I don't know. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you about
Yeah.
that. And they just have such a lovely, dynamic between the two of them. And
Hmm.
yeah, I actually had it when I did my top 50 animated films of all time.
Uh-huh.
I had Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were Rabbit in there in that top 50.
Ah,
That's been a couple years, so I don't know if it would still make the cut, but
well, I mean,
did back then.
you've probably seen a lot more animated films since then, so a lot of
Yeah,
stuff
exactly.
some stuff would get the sack.
Yeah, like I hadn't seen Inside Out at that point,
Hmm.
so it was a while back. So anyway, let's talk about the last one, Chicken Run. or it's the first one, but our last one
Yeah.
to talk about.
Yep.
So Chicken Run is so great. It's
Mhm.
this spoof on the satire on prison escape movies. You have Farmer Tweedy's farm,
Mhm.
and Mrs. Tweedy decides to have chicken pies because eggs aren't making enough, and Ginger is sort of the rebellious one who's always trying to figure out ways out,
Mhm.
and then they get this flying chicken, and that's an American,
Yeah.
and this is just the best. It's so funny. I really
Yeah.
debated about where to put it in the ranking, but
Mhm.
it's so funny. It's so sweet. It's so scary at
Yeah.
points, and I love like are are you off on holiday? I love that one. And she's like knitting, and
Oh
she
yeah.
knits the hangman's noose. Is so hilarious. I
Oh yeah.
love that.
That's another British trope you get a lot. The kind of, I mean, it's usually a female character who's just kind of blissfully ignorant and consistently comically misses the point.
Yeah, yeah, it's just really funny. I don't want to be a pie,
Mhm.
and I
I
like
don't
that.
like gravy.
Yeah, I don't even like gravy.
My
Yeah,
whole life flashed before my eyes. It was really boring.
it was really boring. Yeah, so good. I love it. Yeah, and it. I mean, it is very predictable, but
Mhm.
like I didn't care. It was very effectively because I feel like you can do movies two ways. One, you can be super original and have this
Mhm.
really creative idea, like
Mhm.
original idea, or you can take one of the classic storytelling tropes or ideas or
Mhm.
whatever types, and you just execute it really well, and you have really
Yeah.
good characters, and you have, then I don't care if I've seen this story a million times. If you do it well,
Yeah.
then that's great to me.
Mhm. Yeah, and because most animated films have to be suitable for kids, most of them are taking story ideas that are done a lot. So
Yeah,
obviously, a lot of them fumble on that point because they're so corporatized. But then you have something like this, which is just so streamlined, and I kind of feel that's the difference between British films and American films are very kind of concerned with the structure and the stories and character arcs, almost sometimes to the point of distraction that you can't enjoy the rest.
yeah,
In British films, that stuff matters, but they can't. Sometimes they're kind of using that as a framework to let the other moments shine. On a lot of occasion, that can make the film the seams show true, and even though it's enjoyable, it feels very slight. You get that feeling from a lot of British films, especially whenever they make one off a TV show. But then obviously you have something like this where it's just so wonderfully executed. And
yeah,
this film and Wallace and Gromit are almost exact. Curse the Were Rabbit. I mean, they're almost exactly the same length, but but almost everything in this film does feel like it belongs. Like when they have the 3 minute title sequence that's setting out their constant escapes and what have you, and even all the stuff before the rooster arrives and the training sequences and the third act climax. It all fits. There's barely a moment wasted in this film.
yeah. I mean, you do have the Lyra reveal plot, which is I always is like, oh man, it's probably my least favorite trope in stories, but
Hmm.
it's fine, and they do fine. I mean, you
Well,
because you know so long that he's lying, like from
yeah.
the very pretty much the first time you meet him, you
Hmm.
basically know,
Yeah.
and
I
so
also think it's far less about the fact that he lied and more so about the fact that he left. Like when he comes back, Ginger slaps him. She doesn't say that's for lying. She says that's for leaving.
that's a good point.
So
Yeah, that's a good
so
point.
it's so like there's a lot more to it than in most poorly done lie reveal moments in animated
Yeah.
films.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
really good. So yeah, so let's go over our rankings for the all
Hmm.
seven.
Yeah.
So for me, I have Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were Rabbit at number one. I have Arthur Christmas at two. I have Chicken Run at three, and those are about an equal tie for me. I really
Hmm.
love all three of those. And then I have Shaun the Sheep movie at four. I
Hmm.
have The Pirates at five. Early Man at six, and Flushed Away at seven.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah. That, that's pretty legit. Yeah.
So what about you? What's your
Uh,
seven?
I'm gonna be controversial and go from the bottom up.
Oh, okay.
It's funner that way. So
All right, good.
flushed away at number 7. A bit disposable and probably the only one you could really skip. Early Man, it's certainly enjoyable, but a bit slight and forgettable at times. Pirates and Adventure with Scientists, kind of the same, but a notch above Early Man. Really enjoyable. And then Art of Christmas, by all means, a really good film. I don't know, I love it, but it's still really good and very heartwarming and enjoyable. Then we get to the really brilliant ones. Shaun the Sheep movie, bloody fantastic, really timeless. It's basically another Winnie the Pooh film. I know I keep making that comparison,
Yeah.
but it's such a good one.
And there's been so ever since the Minions, there have been so many movies made about like adorable little sidekicks type characters that are, whatever, having adventures. And I'm telling you guys, this one is the one that does it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably true. It's a very iffy gray area, having adorable humanoid-esque animals.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
So yeah,
so then my two top spots. I'm really erring on this. I know in my heart that Chicken Run is the better film, but something about my connection to Curse of the Rare Rabbit, because it was the first Aardman film that I saw. I might have seen Chicken Run before, but I honestly can't remember if I did. I think I did, but I can't remember. But like Curse of the Rare Rabbit is what got me into their stuff. So I'm going to put Chicken Run ahead, but say that Curse of the Rare Rabbit is like a barely an inch behind it, and they're both near masterpieces as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they're so good. I love them. And I always watch Chicken Run at Thanksgiving. It seems like a very fall film to me.
Yeah. Well, because obviously Chicken Run was very successful over here when it was released, like not just the States. It was about $50 million here, and for a film to make half its US gross in the UK is no mean feat. But it gets shown on Christmas here frequently enough.
Oh, on Christmas?
Yeah. So does Art of Christmas on that fact, actually.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would hope so with Arthur Christmas. And but yeah, no, that's a really good ranking. I can totally see where you're at with all of those. So thanks for joining me to talk Aardman. They're so great. Yeah. I wish I had loved Early Man more. I'd be sort of I really wanted to come out of it being like, everybody go see this, like I was after Paddington 2. But I just couldn't. I couldn't. But still, everyone go see. Everyone check out the rest of these movies and still watch Early Man. But they're just such a great studio, and they are so creative and so funny, and still keeping stop motion alive, which is just wonderful. And so, thanks for joining me to talk about it. Really appreciate it.
Aardman Animation, how could I not?
So where can people find you?
All right, so I have a YouTube channel called Cartoon Karma. You can find me there. Same name on Facebook, @Toon Karma on Twitter. And yeah, you can find me there. So do that if you want to,
Yeah, you should. You all should. And you can find me at Smiling LDS on social media and at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and on YouTube. So check that out. And thanks again.